Welcome to the Scale with Pros podcast with your host, myself, Cody Barton, the number one place to be if you want to build a business beyond yourself. And for all the resources we talk about in the show, make sure to head over to scalewithpros.com. Now, in today's episode, I'm going to be focusing on one of the areas of business that I think is arguably the most important that you need to focus on if you want to scale past $1 million a year and become a multi-million a year company. And this is where I see a lot of companies getting stuck, once they finally surpass $1 million a year, somewhere in the 1 to 3 million a year range. And that is leadership. And so in this episode, we're going to be talking through the 4 stages of leadership that you have to go through and that you have to be helping your team be able to go through. And this is, one of the areas of business that I think that goes, a bit overlooked, because if you can lead people, you can run and, successfully grow any type of business. You don't need to be the expert. You just need to be the expert leader, right? So we're going to go through those 4 stages, and I'm going to recommend, a couple books in this episode that, if you're trying to hone in on your leadership skills, where you can be doing that and how to understand where you are in your leadership journey right now. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. So let's talk about stage 1 of leadership. What I look at is stage 1 of leadership is that, base level of being a team member at a company, right? I am a team member, and, let's talk about biggest hurdles and, kind of the arrival points. I don't love saying arrival, but more of like, okay, you have some competency there to move to the next stage. So within this, you're a team member, you're typically an individual contributor at a company, and the biggest hurdle is self-centeredness. And the arrival point, again, is like self-awareness, self-mastery. And what that really means is for you to be able to ascend as a leader in an organization, you have to be able to lead yourself, right? Like, we can't lead others if we can't lead ourselves. So that means you have to be able to do things like create a schedule, be able to stick to it yourself. That means you have to be able to commit to doing things and stick to those things yourself, right? That means that you have to go from this me personality of being an individual contributor to a we person, where it's about the we of an organization. And so it's going and becoming more self-aware, and it's being able to become a little bit more selfless to go to that next level where you're not just individually contributing to your results and not caring about the results of others. It's where you have to not only contribute your results, but then also start preparing yourself to go to that next level of leadership to be able to help others get results as well. And so what does it look like from going from this like individual contributor to a new leader? And, what are some of the recommendations I have here? So first things first is, I do have a book recommendation, which you could just find on Amazon. And this book's called The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey. And it's kind of a silly name for a book, but, overall concept helps new leaders understand how to empower themselves to do the work that they need to do, while also learning how to delegate successfully to other team members when you haven't maybe done this before. So you can start, getting yourself in a position where you can successfully do what you need to do while helping that person that may be newly reporting to you be successful. And, a little bit of a spoiler in the book, but, where it talks about the 1 minute manager meets the monkey is, when you're leading a team and there's monkeys or work that has to be done by these team members, what sometimes new leaders will do is they get these monkeys to their team, and then their team member throws the monkey back to them, and then they start carrying all of their team's monkeys on their back, and then they get overwhelmed and aren't able to successfully get what they need to done, and they can't drive results for that team member, which obviously is not a winning strategy to grow and scale a company. That is, from level 1 of leadership of that team member, individual contributor, moving towards that next stage of leadership. And so what does that next stage look like? Next stage is really around, actually that new leader stage. And what it looks like is, you're a new leader, maybe to a team, and your biggest hurdle when you're a newer leader is typically being able to drive results through others. And, what does it look like when you quote unquote arrive at level 2 to then start moving towards level 3? It's the selflessness. Again, you're going to hear that, a lot as I talk about this, but It's moving through and becoming a selfless leader. You're really supporting and encouraging the other people that you're managing, their growth and their glory. And at this stage is where sometimes there's a challenge, because as a leader, the benefit is you get to celebrate the wins of your team, and you get to love on them and help them be successful, and coach them, mentor them. But what I look at is, when you're a selfless leader at this stage, is you are really, when things are going well with your team, you celebrate and you give the credit to your team. And when things aren't going well with your team, you're taking responsibility for that, and you own the lack of the result that's happening there. And so there's sometimes a challenge at this stage of leadership where newer leaders sometimes will blame their team. Well, if you are leading this team and you have the authority to hire people to this team, manage them, lead them to the results, and they aren't getting the results, if you're pointing your finger at them, you have three fingers pointing back at you, because you're the leader. You're the one that has this team that you're overseeing. And if they're crushing it, the team is great, you celebrate the team. If they're not performing well, that's your fault as the leader. It's speed of the leader, speed of the team. And so you have to lead well. That is where I find a lot of leaders stay for a very long period of time. Seeing this time and time again from companies that I consult with, companies that I've bought into and help consult their leadership teams, is people stay stuck in this team member where it's like this self-centeredness, individual contributor level, or they stay in this new leader phase. It doesn't mean that you've been managing people for 10 years that you maybe pass this. You could be staying in that same spot for 10 years because you don't know how to drive results through others. That's how you really graduate to that next stage. And so, when you go from this new leader stage to that next level, you have to be able to break through that. And it's like, well, how do you drive results through others, right? The way that you do that is, being able to, lead your people extremely well. And really, it's being able to manage the constraints of your team and to be able to coach them up and have hard conversations and in empowering them to do what they need to do. Sometimes leaders at this stage, mistakes that I see they'll make is they delegate to a team member messes it up, so then they just take that back and just do it themselves. I'm just going to do it myself because they can't figure it out on their own. Well, they will never be able to figure it out on their own if you continue to just take things back from your team. You have to empower them to succeed at the thing that you're delegating to them. Otherwise, you just stay capped at the stage of leadership. And so when you're looking at going from this stage of, the new leader to the next stage, you've figured out how to drive results through other people on your team. That's like that layer of leadership where it's you managing people that do the work. The next stage is where it gets even trickier, where now you become, the stage 3, which is, kind of like more of an executive leader or director type level, where you are a leader of leaders. And at this stage, your biggest hurdle is cross-functional teamwork. You have to oversee multiple leaders in different departments, and you got to get all these crazy personalities to work together. How do you get finance, which is a totally different personality from sales, and the sales, a totally different personality from operations? How do you get all of those leaders in those departments to work together collaboratively as a team, as they all have different things that they have opinions about, different personality types? It gets challenging at this stage. It gets more complicated. And that's why so few people get to this stage in business and beyond, because it's hard. And so you have to be able to, you can call it kind of like be the cat herder. You got to herd all these cats together and get them. You're the, person in the band, waving your hands and telling everyone how to sing in unison and play their instruments in unison. And it's like, that's what you're having to do more at this stage, is getting everyone aligned to be able to do that. How do you know when you've, let's call it, arrived at the stage of leader of leaders? You have, between the leaders that you lead, excellent collaboration. They work well together. They may have some friction, because there's healthy friction in business is okay, but they work well together. They respect each other. They respect the mission, the vision, the values of the company the same, where even if they have differing opinions, they still will support and help each other out. There's great collaboration there. And there's, overall cross-functional buy in together, to work as a team, to work as this we as a unit versus me, my department, then and having silos. If you have silos at this stage, that means that you're not leading these leaders correctly, because you have to break those silos up so that they work as a unit together. And so, some book recommendations that I have of like getting through at this stage of leading leaders, because at this stage I own multiple different companies and have different partners at these companies. And I've figured out these things that you have to do where there's certain companies I lead an owner of another business that leads leaders in their business that lead leaders that lead leaders, like literally 4 or 5 levels deep on this. And it's challenging to work through these tiers of leadership. And so some book recommendations that I have here, because you can be mentoring and helping your leaders through these same types of books and getting them on the same page together. There's a couple books by Patrick Lencioni, and you could find his books on Amazon. There's 2 specifically. Book 1 is The Ideal Team Player. And so the Ideal Team Player talks through, there's really 3 key functions that, every ideal team player should have. And that is, they're humble. They don't have an ego. They're hungry, meaning they have work ethic. They want to grow. They want to do better. They want to keep driving forward. And number 3, they're people smart, meaning they actually have some emotional intelligence. They can read the room. They could read the personalities and, people's emotions when they're having conversations with them. Challenging to get people in all 3 of those, especially between different departments and different skill sets. And so that ideal team player you can use to coach your leaders to become more like that. And you should ask yourself, do you have all 3 of those? Are you humble, hungry, people smart? And if you're not, how do you expect your team? How do you expect to attract and retain people that have those skills if you don't yourself have them? And so that's, book 1 at this level of leading leaders. Book 2, I would say, is called The Motive, also by Patrick Lencioni. And this really goes into the motive or the reason behind why they would want to be a leader, and helps them understand, are they leading because they want to lead people and mentor and help others grow? Or are they only doing it out of ego and they just want the title, but they don't want the responsibility of, helping others grow? In my opinion, at this level of leading leaders, is you need to get your leaders indoctrinated into being humble, hungry, people smart, and also to be doing this for the right reasons. They need to have the right motive in place to do the things that they're doing in business, so that they're coming from the right place and they could duplicate these leadership lessons through their team. And so that's really stage 3, is leading leaders, all that cross-functional teamwork, and, arriving again is collaboration, cross-functional, enrollment together. And then we have the final level, stage 4 of leadership, which is, this is a title, so anyone can call themselves this, but it doesn't mean that from a leadership level you're here. But, this is like you're the CEO, managing director, general manager. You run the entire company at this point, basically. This is, you're that visionary leader. I don't say visionary leader as in like visionary integrator. This is not relevant to that. This is, you at this level have to overcome the hurdle of mastery of people and operations. You need to be able to be the spreadsheet guy and the people guy or girl, right? Like either or, right? So you have to be great at both of those things. And that is the biggest hurdle to get to the stage, because sometimes people excel in leadership because they're great at people, but they're not good at the operational components of the business, or vice versa. They're really great at the operational components, but they're like a dumpster fire with dealing with people. They're not great at leading people, inspiring people, encouraging people, coaching people. So it's working through both of those. And how do you know whether you've, we're calling it arrived, but it's an endless summit. How do you know when you've arrived at this level? Well, at this level, if you've arrived, you have layers of leadership, leaders that lead leaders. You were able to get all of those leaders to functionally work together as a team towards a common mission, goal, objective for the company. You were able to strategically put a plan in place for the overall company, and your leaders all buy into that and drive towards the execution and actually achieve the targets that you as the overall leader set forth for the team. That's how you know you've arrived there, because you strategically, from an operational standpoint, know how to take the business to that next level. and you know how to lead the people and guide the people and get them to work together towards that singular mission vision for your company. And so as you go through these stages, you know, it takes people months, years to go through these stages. And there's a never-ending journey to leadership. You know, I'm not a perfect leader. I have plenty of deficiencies myself that I have to continuously work on. And it's something we have to continuously go after day after day after day. You know, it's kind of like if you work out, right? It's like you work out once, you don't stay fit forever. Like you consistently work out, you consistently eat right to keep in shape. You know, it's the same things you do with leadership and growing your leadership lid as yourself, is you consistently do the work you need to grow in leadership and then implement. Take note of when things are working well as a leader and when things aren't, and being humble enough to know there's always another level that you can be growing to. Those are kind of what I see as the 4 layers of leadership, from going from that individual contributor to the newer leader to that, you know, leader of leaders, leader to that overall visionary leader at the highest level. And you know, some of the feedback that I have on going through those stages. And so, you know, the question that I'd have for you as you're listening is looking at where do you stand in your leadership journey? What are you currently doing to develop your leadership skills to go to that next level? Because I'll tell you this, once you get to that 1 to 3 million a year range, you typically cap out at that if you don't have strong leadership abilities to continue growing the company, because you start to have a lot more team members involved in the things that you do at your company. And if you don't have these skills and these competencies, your company will plateau, because if you can't successfully drive results through others, your business can't grow. These are the things that you're going to start encountering. Or if you're listening and you're at that revenue range, you're probably shaking your head agreeing, because that's what you're dealing with right now. Hopefully those, you know, few book recommendations, if you actually get them, read them and implement from them, will help you kind of working through these stages of leadership. And, you know, again, it's an endless summit. So, you know, with that being said, though, that is today's episode. Just in a recap, you know, of those book recommendations, we talked about The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey. You can get that on Amazon. And then Patrick Lencioni's The Motive and The Ideal Team Player. Those are the recommendations I have. And if you got any value from this episode, help me out. If you're listening on the podcast app, please leave me a review. That's how I know that you guys are getting value from this, and, you know, helps me continue on this journey to continue bringing value. And if you're listening on YouTube, like the video, help me out with that algorithm that's so tricky to work through. With that being said, we'll see you guys in the next episode, and go out there, lead. The world needs more high quality leaders. So go out there and be one of them.